Energy. It is all around us, both seen and unseen. It affects all the lives within humanity, our great planet Earth, and the entire universe. It is a conscious, cosmic matrix, an ever-evolving cycle, creating, breaking down, and recreating. This is Connected with your host, Andrea Dragonfly. Andrea tells us that energy is the foundation of our human experience, intrinsically affecting every facet of our lives, our perceptions, choices, and actions, as well as the challenges, opportunities, and people we attract. So now, please welcome the host of Connected, Andrea Dragonfly.
Hey there, welcome. Welcome to the show Connected. I am your host, Andrea Dragonfly, and we are nearing the end of our cycle of our time together. So this would be like season 1. And I'm really kind of playing around with, should I do a season 2, right? So this is something I've been working with to see, what would that look like? This whole season 1 has definitely been just an introduction of connecting you to information. And again, it's just the very beginning of that connection. Everything that's being presented to you through these shows is a vast sea of information that you can dive into and really get lost in the interconnectedness of that subject, first of all, and then how it's deeply connected to everything else around it, right? And we can just start going through and getting lost into these rabbit holes of information. And it's, I love this stuff. Of course, this is my life. It's my work. And it's an offering to you, the viewer, to play with. And again, as I've been saying, almost every show, the information that's being presented is information for you to take in, bring into your energy field, let it inform you. There's truth in it. And you may not fully align in that truth at the very beginning, but it's going to begin to inform you because you're not unfamiliar with it. We've been talking about multiple lives. And so throughout some of these past lives of yours, this information has existed as well. And it's kind of like this remembering that bubbles up that says, oh yeah, I remember that, or that makes sense, or I can connect into that, right? So again, this information is all about that connection. And if I were to look at season 2, it would be like, okay, I've been pretty much the sole presenter. And I know people are like, oh, you should have more people on the show and talk things out. And I just know that there's so much about that in talk podcasts and things like that, that I would really have to kind of look at that more deeply because people are busy and people are camera shy. It's not that I haven't invited a lot of people to join. Some people are open. Some people are definitely a little skeenish about it. So it would have to be, really looking into what would season 2 be about, right? So if you have any suggestions, ideas, that you would like to suggest, then by all means, please reach out to me. Reach out to me through my website or any of the social media channels, through Facebook or through Instagram, and give me some information. Tell me what you think, because I'm open. The other part of it is that a 1-hour commitment to these shows is a lot. We live in a fast-paced world. An hour is a lot of time for people. And not everybody can actually, first of all, has the time to sit with this information for an hour or wants to, So even looking at that. And so there's another part of me that's looking at, okay, I got 5 shows left. And so how am I wrapping up the end of the season? And instead of doing it on Bold Brave Television, maybe I just start doing, vlogging, video, blogging through my website and through Facebook or something like that as well. And so, and having them be much shorter, 10 minutes, 12 minutes, 15-minute little bursts of information. And that way I could also be in the world. It's very different where you could actually do your videos out in the world and then bring it back. And then maybe I'd have to figure out how to edit, or find somebody who's really good at that, because I'm terrible with technology, as you probably have witnessed through this whole series of shows, right? Um, but then you can have like the ocean, or you can have the jungle, or you can have the mountains, or whatever in the background. And it's just such a better background than what my little studio looks like at this moment, right? So all of those are coming up, and I've been swirling with that information as how do I proceed? How do I continue to deliver information? What is that going to look like? Because again, we have just scratched the surface, just the tiny little surface of all that exists, because everything that, if we want to go deep in the cosmos, you just take one of these subjects that we've been talking about, and you can go deep through layer upon layer upon layer of how this gets us deeper into the cosmic matrix, right? And so each one of these shows only gets us so far, but the invitation is for you to take it further. Be inspired, be like, oh, I want to know more about that. And so, which leads us to today's topic. I've been talking about the gods, the goddesses, archetypes. And last week we talked about Eros and Cupid and the archetype of the lover, right? And the Cupid, or even the angel, and how these different, embodiments play out. And we're looking at, all of the gods and the goddesses are this lower pantheon. And the pantheon, just to kind of, for a couple of shows ago, the pantheon really is like the whole family of god and goddesses, but it can also include heroes and heroines, demigods, which are, where the god or goddess has, a baby with a mortal. And so they're part god, part mortal, as the demigod. And, they're the demons. And so there's a lot of extra, information players even that live within a pantheon, but it's really this, the category, the classification of the known names of the gods and goddesses, and that culture's stories. And then mythology is also the stories and how they play out and pertain to each culture. So throughout history, we're going to have all of these different gods and goddesses that hold qualities. They hold virtues, or, resonant archetypal energies, which is how we brought in the archetypes. And so even thinking about like the king god, right? And that we can think of Zeus, who's the king of all the gods sitting on Mount Olympus, right? So he's like the king of all the gods. And then we have the father god, and we can think about father gods throughout, every culture has a different father god, because that's the divine masculine. In Norse mythology, you're going to have Odin, and again, Zeus, and and even Kronos. And Kronos is not necessarily a god. Kronos is an elemental type of a titan, actually, who is actually Zeus's father, even within Greek mythology. So we have, these different powerful forms, and on the feminine side, so we're going to go back and forth, because I was going to go, masculine, feminine, but, then we have the queen, and Hera is the queen mother, goddess married to Zeus. If he's the king, she's the queen. But we also have Inanna. She's the queen of heaven and earth. And she's a Sumerian, one of our very oldest and most celebrated goddesses, who has actually, she's the earliest written about in antiquity. So the earliest goddess ever written about throughout history, through cuneiform, which is a form of old ancient writing, right? So we have this queen goddess. And then we also have, the gods and goddesses of the underworld, or of death. So Hades in Egypt, or Hades would certainly be Greek mythology. Ereshkigal is the feminine, and that's also Sumerian. That's Inanna's sister, and she's the queen of the underworld, right? And then we also, we have Anubis. And Anubis is also one of the judges, Anubis and Osiris. So their archetype is the judge, and they're the ones that are weighing the feather against the heart when in Egypt, when a person dies, to see, what were their deeds like Were their deeds as light as a feather? Did they live a good life? Or were they, were they heavy and had an energy that was not of a good contribution to society at that time, which would determine where they went in the afterworld, right? So again, whenever we think of a god or a goddess, they represent a very significant archetype. So even like Persephone, and I think about her, and she is the daughter, but also a damsel. Like she was absconded, or she was taken while Zeus had given Hades permission to marry her against her will. So she's also a victim, archetype energy, but also the damsel and needs to be saved. And so she comes down and she gets saved even by her mother, Demeter, who comes. And so Persephone is a seasonal goddess of the of agriculture and the growth of foods. So she can be above ground for 6 months, but then she has to go into the land of death and be with Hades to be his consort, his bride. So again, we look at these archetypal energies and how different societies have connected to them throughout their time, right? Because societies have come, civilizations have come and gone. We're an evolution of different belief systems that will carry old god and goddesses into new modern eras at the time throughout history, and they may change. Society changes, right? Cultures are changing. And so the gods and goddesses and the pantheons change according to those cultures. And so, even within, we have the tricksters, right? And so there's trickster energies of the coyote, which is an archetype for Native Americans, but it's also trickster in the Norse is Loki, right? So, we have the saboteur, those who sabotage. Now, I mean, Hera, she's a mother goddess, but oh my goodness, did she sabotage all sorts of gods and goddesses throughout their, in Greek mythology. So just playing and looking at how sometimes we are responsible in manipulation and sabotaging other people if we're living in our shadow elements of ourselves. And then also looking at how do we sabotage our own lives? How did Hera also sabotage her own life as well? So these, again, are these archetypal energies that we can find in the faces of the god and goddesses. And we can bring them as teachable moments for ourselves as to how we can identify with them, see those qualities within ourselves, and begin to work on them and go deep. Look at how do they show up in our lives? How does that element, that archetypal energy continue to play out in all of these different relationships? Because there's going to be themes, right? And again, I was talking about the archetypal cards. Carolyn Miss had the deck of, I believe there are 80 cards, beautifully done. She even gives you a bunch of blank ones so that if you identify with certain archetypes that aren't written there, then you can write your own, right? However, she also puts several of them together, so so the rebel may also be for example, the pirate. So, this is how a few of them play out, and they're very similar energies, but they may have just a slightly different archetypal energy to it, but they're still kind of within that whole energetic of the archetype, right? So, but anyway, that was the invitation to play with those last week. And now as we move forward, and again, I only really have 5 of these shows left, and just playing with, okay, how do we want to unfold? And I do know that there have been several shows I said, oh, we're going to get to that. We're going to get to that. So I want to try to tie some things in. And what I really want to do is I want to talk about the divine feminine and the deep, beautiful part of the All Mother, or the Earth Mother, or the Great Mother, right? And where does this archetypal energy come from? And we see this energy within our Great Mother Earth. There's a lot to unpack here. There is millennia of information between cultures on how this has been seen. And so I'm going to do my very best to just present this information. And again, this is, again, scratching the surface of what is possible with information. And so with the All Mother, the conscious great Earth Mother, and connecting into the consciousness of all life, where does this really come from? And there are some myths. There's lots of myths. Every, again, culture has the Earth story, the Earth story of how the Great Mother Earth has come about. However, the one that I would like to really focus on is a Gnostic myth. And Gnosticism is it's a wisdom tradition. It's a um, it's a school of thought, and it was around during the first and second century, right at the shift of the common era before, when Jesus, Christ Jesus was happening and moving into this energy. However, there's also the mystery there. It's one of the mystery traditions. And so the writers of Gnosticism were the early seers. They were the early writers that were being able to really kind of download this information through the higher consciousness. And this is the esoteric way. And I talked about the difference between esotericism and exotericism. And the esotericism, and I said, I'm going to have a whole show on that yet. So is that those who have come from before us, the wisdom keepers of time, and I spoke a little bit about how sometimes they may have descended from these higher conscious planes of existence, from the Venusians or from these other star systems, to kind of help grow humans along our way, right? To help give us some guidelines as to how do we evolve through time and space. And so it's part of, it's part of the old order. It's part, I don't say the old order. I don't want to be, it's probably very confusing. So I'm going to just kind of remove that and get rid of that. But it's really about those who've come in and are able to take this very expansive information and try to use metaphor, storytelling, to help us understand concepts that were so big for our development, for our consciousness, because we are an evolving consciousness. And these are higher conscious beings that come in, and they are the teachers, and they were the sages, and they were the gurus and whatnot of earlier civilizations of bringing this information forward. Like the Buddha came 600 years before the Christ came, preparing the consciousness for the Christ to come into Jesus for this whole nother level of conscious expansion. So all of this has kind of like been playing out throughout time and throughout history and throughout those who have been leading the way, the mages, the sages, the enlightened ones, right? And so Gnosticism comes in from that. And and it's an invitation to go into this and explore this, deeper, and get on the YouTube. And that's what I love about right now. There's so much information that we are inundated with, tons of information. And there is John Lamb Lash. He's out there and he's talking a lot about this myth as well, the myth of Sophia. And I have a few minutes here before we jump in, because I just want to add kind of, this is like coming into the myth. We're going to take a commercial break shortly here, and then after that we'll talk about the myth. But John Lamb Lash also is like, he's a deep philosopher who's really studied a lot of some of the ancient traditions, and really kind of landed the Gnostic myth of Sophia and has brought it forward. He has his own podcasts that he, shares a lot of this information with. The story that I'm going to talk about actually, well, it's the Gnostic myth in many different versions. My teachers through the Star House in Boulder, Colorado, Leela Sophia Tresmer, she has devoted much of her life to Sophia and to being a master teacher of Sophia. She does a whole series on Sophia. So even just bringing this information to you, it's going to just be scratching the surface. And she had developed a beautiful animated video that I have attached in my resources. So it's under episode 47, under Sophia, Earth mother, goddess of wisdom. And Sophia is actually the Greek word for wisdom. So this is where there's this connection back and forth between Sophia and wisdom. And this is earth wisdom. And this is us being on the earth as these earth beings, bringing the wisdom of the cosmos through Sophia through. So we're looking at Sophia, and within the Gnostic tradition, they saw God as the feminine, the divine feminine. And I would like to talk about, when we get back from this break, I'm going to talk about the feminine in form and the divine masculine and the divine feminine union, because what is above is so below. And there's all of these laws of universal laws, even, that are all connected. Everything's connected, right? Which is what this show is all about. So we're going to take a quick break. And just know that the video is there, and it's she goes through about 30 minutes of really talking about it and sharing the video, and she's going to do a much better job because she's a master teacher of this, and I'm her student, right? And I'm bringing it to you through this platform. And there are other versions. Gaia TV has their whole version of Sophia, and other wonderful teachers bringing this in video form for that extra visual. But this today is really just about landing the consciousness within the earth. So we're going to take that quick break. We'll be back in 2 minutes. See you back here in 2.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery, or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave Media Network and TuneIn Radio. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them. Rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies. Find settings that allow them to be the most productive and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Welcome back. Okay, so we are talking about the Gnostic myth of earth creation, also known as the kind of like deepens into understanding, and then on the seventh day there was rest, right? And so this myth is going to lead into talking more about that, but that may or may not be next show, or maybe leading into that for 2 shows from now, because we're moving in that direction. So I just want to let you know. But what's happening is that I'm going to I'm going to be talking about these 2 different stories a little bit simultaneously, but I'm going to talk about the creation of humanity more in detail in that show. But what I want to say is, because they're connected, of course, right? Of course they're connected. So it's about creation energy. And understanding what is this creation energy. Like we think about God, and we've been taught to believe that through the Bibles and through the last 2,000 years, which is a pretty long time, by all means, it's imprinted in the modern people of the day that when we think of God, through a Christian or a Judy, I'm going to say Judaism perspective, or even Islamic perspective. And again, I don't know a whole lot about Islam. I really want to learn more about that, but that hasn't happened yet. But it's the Abrahamic traditions coming from Abraham that we're looking at God from the story of the Bible. And I've happened to do a bunch of beautiful, deeper study into that, because we're looking at those angelic hierarchy beings. There's something called the Elohim. And the Elohim are actually the angels of form. And then above them are the angels called the dynamis. And they're angels of motion. And above them are the angels of the kyriatetes. And they're the angels of wisdom. And then above that, there is the angels of the thrones. Now that's a tier. There's 3 tiers. And so these tiers work on different levels of expansiveness. So it's kind of like a puddle, right? If you, or a, it's kind of like the rings in a pond. If you were to plunk that stone into the water, you're going to see the ring, and it's going to go bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, right? So these are the levels of consciousness that expand out, right? In order for us to have form, we need to have motion for form to come into play. Because it's through the swirling of motion that form begins to find its form, right? So there's all these things that are happening. It's not that we had these bodies first and then consciousness came. We had to develop consciousness first and then these bodies. And so that's going to be maybe our next show. Maybe part of it will be in the next show, and it'll be the next show. It could be the next 2 shows. Anyway, so we're looking at how this energy is swirling and coming together. And so Sophia, this is before form actually takes place. Now, the fun thing is that I have the information in the ancient texts that these things are happening simultaneously, because what I'm, as we look at the story of the Bible and about how God is creating the world and man within 6 days, and then the 7th day there's rest. There's this other version that's similar, but it's the same beings, and then there's the one God, there shall be no other God besides me being. Well, this is a whole other thing too, because that which creates is a very vast energy of multiple things. And there's the greater God of all of that. But it's these other beings that are actually doing all the work. Okay. So Sophia is an aeon. And an aeon is a divine being. It's a primordial energy of the cosmos. And usually that if we look it up on the, in the definition for the aeon in the dictionary or online or Google it or whatever, I don't know, it's probably going to say something along the lines of like billions of years, but we're talking even grander than that. Because if we live in infinity and there's infinite amount, there's going to be a giant cosmic span of time that's beyond our human conception of billion. Okay, so it's going to be out there. But she is living in the vast cosmic glow of all of that's deeply connected. So when we shed these physical bodies and we go back to our spirit form, we're connected into that, right? Now, her story goes on that she is just in this, and I'm giving you the very short version, and I may be slightly a little off in some places, so please check me out. Check it out on the YouTube through the link that I have posted on my website, please, because Sophia Tresmer is so much better at articulating this. And I've known this myth for 20 plus years, but being able to articulate it is never really easy for me. So I'm not quite sure. So just like bringing in and asking Sophia to even help me share her myth with you all, right? So here she is, and she's really playing in that field, and she's so lost in the love light of the cosmos that she ends up, and I forget how this happens, even though I just watched the myth earlier today, so I should be like, why don't I know that, right? But she begins to go off into this place of, she hits the spark where she falls out of the cosmic flow of all. And this is the all, capital ALL, all that is, it's the unity. And so this is where we go from unity of the all into the units of unity, it's the macro and the micro, okay? So she falls into this whole kind of gravitational pull. And it brings her into this level. And as she's coming into this, there's a few things that are happening here. There's all sorts of things are kind of coming off of her. And as things are coming off of her, it's almost like she's birthing this other type of energy as well. Now, she is part of the awe, the wonder, the beauty of creation. But she's also at the same time, these little energies that are coming off of her are kind of energetics that are known as these archons. And these archons are kind of it's the duality. It's the destructive energies that are coming off of her. So she's falling into this gravitational pull that has the creation of duality of all that is creation, but also that which is destruction. And now this is my version of sharing the story. Leela's going to say it a little differently, and other people who do this myth will probably say it differently. But this is how that comes into an existence. And so with these archon energies are somewhat of that destructive energy. It's part of the process of the evolutional process as well, is because all things have to go through their cycles in order for them to die and again to kind of rebirth themselves into a grander, more stronger, deeper, aware. It's connection to the all of the capital ALL versus the small ALL, right? And so, but Sophia it's almost as like through her, she is in such ecstasy of creation that she's creating everything. So she starts to create, the waters and, the first drop and the air, and through the waters, she starts to create the fish, and she starts to create the birds, and she starts to create the land, and she starts to create all of these things. And we have to remember that things are not materialized in the way that we know them today. These very old myths, we were energy having to come into form. And like anything, there's millions or billions of years of this process that's happening. And again, as you see, I'm swirling, I'm twirling, I'm kind of, rocking back and forth, because that motion is how things actually create form, right? Well, okay, right? So in that, the goddess Sophia is starting to create all of the richness of life, of the biodiversity of this planet. She becomes the consciousness. She becomes the earth itself and the mother of all the creatures. And of course, there's different hierarchies of creatures. I mean, we have cold-blooded, the reptiles and the fish, and the birds. They came first, and then the warm bloods came after them. So then we have the mammals, and then the humans came after them. We were not created with animals, and that's different parts of the creation stories. We did not, like evolutionary, and I went to school and became an anthropologist, but in order for me to become an anthropologist, I had to know, biological anthropology and primatology and all the things that there's the theory that we were born out of monkeys, or we split along the line. That's not true, within these other wisdom stories of creation. But Sophia becomes the consciousness of creation. And that's why, certain animals, certain things, certain fauna and flora, fauna is the animal, flora is the plant, go through these levels of existence and then extinction. And then some new things are being born out of that, and random selection and mutation. This is the Sophia consciousness. This is how we evolve through all of these different states of existence, right? And one thing will die off and a new version of it will be born out of that. And so this is the evolution, but it's also the intelligence. It's also when we're connecting to the great mother, we're connecting into creation of anything, alchemy. So the word alchemy, is like making gold out of straw or whatever. It's where we're really working with these different energies and chemistry. Alchemy is another version of chemistry. Alchemy is more of the spiritual, energetic of the physical chemistry that we see in science class, right? Or the chemist lab, whatever. Or even just putting an iron, sculpture in your garden and watching it oxidize. You know what I mean? That's chemistry right there. So with humidity and water, and we see it all around us. And this is that evolutionary conscious life. Now, when we think about consciousness is the masculine energy that, for the, especially within the Abrahamic traditions, see as separate from the earth, that the consciousness or God lives above us. It lives outside of the earth in some grandiose space up above in these heavens or heaven or whatever. But it's the consciousness that lives out there. And then it's reflected down like the sun rays, and it's imbued into the earth and into us. And there's so many different stories of this, right? Different models of wisdom tradition and ways that we've seen this and all sorts of things. Pick pick a pantheon, pick a culture, and find that story there. It exists there. That's the father. That's the father's out there. And the mother energy is here on the earth. Now, the thing is that we are consciousness in form. The feminine is the form. The feminine takes the consciousness of out there, of the divine, of the cosmos, and brings it into a form. And this is us as creators. Like, we are creation ourselves. We are the masculine sperm of our fathers. We're the feminine egg of our mothers. We're both having a gendered experience. I've talked about this before. And in that gendered experience, we're the creators. So what are we creating? We create from our soul. Our spirit is here to evolve. Our soul brings us to those places of passion and excitement and an ecstasy, and what we're like, oh my God, I have this great idea. And then it comes into our physical mind. Comes into our mindsets. And then we're really excited about it emotionally. And then physically we put it out into the world. And we have a new whatever, a new story, a new song, a new invention, a new product, a new whatever. We are creators, and that's what we're doing. And we forget. Most of us, we go through life and we don't even know what life's about. We don't even make the connections to it, right? But here we are with great Mother Sophia. Now, the archons, again, are those things that came off of her. Like if you're coming through like fire and you have your sparks. So think about, she's coming through gravity, and she's creating, and she's so deep in the ecstasy of her passion of creating, that these sparks are flying, and she's not even really aware of it. And these are these archon energies of duality. She fell into duality, or she was part of this dualistic nature, because all of the universe doesn't have duality in it, right? I don't know how many parts of the universe has it, but I know that we have it here, right? I'm going to speak to this right now. So these archons are also those parts of our mindset that gnaw at us. Oh, you're not good enough. You're not a good creator. Or, oh, you should just shut up and be quiet, or blah, 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 blah. And so they work on ourselves. They make us feel inadequate, insecure. They make us disconnect from the true creation that we are. So that plays a part too. So that exists, and that's that part of that duality between, that's kind of the destructor, the destroyer. Now, destroying sometimes is a good thing. And so there is a balance. That's a yin yang energy too, because sometimes we need these things for us to find our way. Now, the biggest thing about the Sophia myth, though, is really about how there is this masculine feminine balance. And this masculine feminine balance, as Sophia came in the feminine, and these archons were kind of like, and again, this is my visual that I like sparking off of her, that were all these things that were going to help us evolve and help, through these kind of destructive energies. Sophia came in with the Christos, the Christ creation energy too. The Christ creation energy is the masculine consciousness. So there's a relationship with the Sophia Christos. Now, again, I'm going to absolutely refer back to the Gnostic myth and absolutely say, find whoever tells it to you the way that you can most receive it. I love my teacher, Leela Sophia Tresmer, and her way she does it. But there's also John Lamb Lash. He talks about it. There's, all sorts of different people who are sharing the myth in all sorts of different ways on the YouTube. So go and play with this. And again, just see what I'm sharing, and then how, the actual myth, if I'm getting whatever part's wrong, right? Now, she's represented with, the Christos is represented in the white dove. Excuse me. Sorry about that. I'm excited, so I'm not quite sure why I have a cough here. So the Christos is that dove, and she says that, as she's creating earth and creating all, and we're talking millions of years of this whole process. Billions, right? I mean, I think they say that the earth, technically, even in science, is like 7 billion years old, right? So, and she's an aeon, and she, but she comes in with deeply connected into the powers of the creation power of however we want to call God, because God at this point is just pure creation of masculine, feminine energy, but beyond that, right? It's not a masculine. It's so much more than that. So we are, we're coming to another commercial here. And so what I'd like to say before I break for this commercial is, I know I'm using my hands a lot because this is how I express. This is how I'm trying to take an origin myth and try to make it make sense for you all. And but even so, with that Christos, the Christos is represented as this dove, and that's why we always have the white dove, the laurel, in its mouth and whatnot. So there's a lot of significance and symbolism to that. And she even says, like, there will be a time, like here we're bringing the Christos energy in at the beginning of creation through energy, through Christos creation energy, and then she talks about how she will then send her son to humanity when the time is needed. And of course, so once humans go through the earlier processes of their coming into consciousness, form. I mean, let me reframe. As they are, as they come to the earth and they begin to have their earthly experience, which is really all about the ego and mastering our egos, which we're going to be talking about in a couple of shows from now or next time, that the ego gets so destructive with that archonic energy, she has to send the Christos to save us from ourselves. And that's when the Christos comes in another form through Yeshua or Jesus or during that time. Okay, I'm going to leave you with that. Take a quick break. Be back here in 2 minutes. All right, I'll see ya.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like it was almost instant, like I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic on the BBM Global Network, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Okay, welcome back. Okay, so this is the Sophia Christos connection. This is the masculine feminine connection. And then this even leads further into sacred union, the sacred union of the masculine feminine, the sacred union of that masculine feminine connection that is creation, which is the Christos. So when we think about the All Mother, right, she is like, we can even look at this, the Aeon who falls from the cosmic, amazing yumminess of all that was coming from the Father. So she's also known as the bride of God. She is the counterpart. Now, Cashel Matthews, who is a wisdom teacher, she is out of Oxford, England. I've worked with her myself. She has this book. I'm going to share it with you. It's called Sophia, Goddess of Wisdom, Bride of God. And really beautiful. And it's a pretty nice, thick book. So there's a lot of information here. There's so much information online. So it's not just Cashel Matthews' work, but she, by all means, if you want to get some really beautiful, deeper understanding of the Sophia archetype within the feminine, within the earth, Cashel Matthews' book is beautiful to add to your repertoire of knowledge, right? And then, of course, there's all sorts of other great stuff that's out there, I'm sure, because everybody's got a different way of bringing this information to us, right? And we're looking at, again, coming back to that masculine feminine. And one of the things I was saying at the very beginning is that when we think about, like within Christianity, and of course that was my upbringing, is that there's the God the Father, God the Son, and then the Holy Spirit. And really, this Holy Spirit is this feminine piece. This is how oftentimes even those who are in very dogmatic, very strict belief systems about how this is how it is supposed to be of Christianity, even though it's far from what it really is, they can see the Holy Spirit as the feminine, but the feminine has been cut out of our history for a long time. Millennium, 2000 millennium is 1,000 years. And so if we're looking at well over 3,000 years, millennia. And so the feminine has been taken away, and we've only been, for the last two in particular, been very focused on God the Father only, which puts us out of balance. You cannot just have masculine. Look at the world around you. Nothing would birth if you only had sperm without any seed. Everything would die and then you would have nothing. The balance is so important, essential for us to understand. So then we look at God as the mother. So the all-father energy is that consciousness of all things in existence. And then that mother energy is taking that consciousness and putting it into form, creation, something new and different, that anything at any given time can be created because you can conceive it and poof, there it is. So it's a unity. It has to be unified. And in the unification is the child. And the child is the Christos, the Christ. So you have the All-Mother, the All-Father, and the Christ child. And the child is the absolute perfection of both the mother and the father, genderless. Of course, the Christos came into Jesus, masculine, because the world was dominated by the masculine, the patriarchy at that time, and it had to be a male for the true teachings to evolve. But even within the humanity's consciousness, it's still taking a while for all of the divine feminine to come back. But we are now at this point in time where we're hugely in the revival of the divine feminine. She's like, listen up. I've been sitting over here way too long waiting for y'all to wake up. And now I'm here. And she's been here for a while, right? But for all of, humanity that's beginning to wake up to her in the now, because that's what's happening. And she needs us to wake up, because look what we're doing to our planet. Look what we're doing to her and to all the creatures on an environmental level. Now, whatever's happening on a macro level is happening on a micro level. The mirror. So if we look at how the patriarchy and big capital business and all of these billionaires and all of these people who are extracting and extorting, like all sorts of, everything out of the planet excessively, the more is better, but so much waste and not being responsible in how they're taking care of it. We recognize how that same energy has been put on the feminine within those who are genderized as female, the fight of the feminine. And of course, now I don't want to say that every female is that way and not every business is, participating in this, but I'm just inviting you to look at where that does exist. Look at how the feminine have to fight for them to even have equality within whatever, it's always been like that. There's many cultures out there, even to this very day, that, women are still better to be, not seen and not heard in the domestic domain. They can't go out even, to go buy groceries unless they're escorted by a man, right? So there's inequalities that are happening within just our expression of the feminine. But then there's the feminine within the masculine. Every male has their anima that lives in them. I talked about Carl Jung talks about the animus and the anima, which are the collective unconscious feminine that lives within the masculine. Every man has their divine feminine within them. and every woman has the divine masculine, the animus, within them that we need to bring into balance. And we recognize in our world around us that it's not balanced, and that now is the time for us to become aware of it, more conscious, to begin to bring those back into balance, to begin to look at that within ourselves. And I know that there is I talked about some myths. I talked about the myth of Psyche and Eros just last week, and how Psyche is actually the psychological myth that I think his name is Robert Richardson. I'll find out. I have his book in my library here. But he uses mythology to talk about the story of the fight for we feminine to really evolve. And that's to find the inner masculine within us that says, yeah, we are whole. We are complete. I don't need somebody to complete me. I complete me. And the same thing for the masculine. Our men also need to find the divine feminine within them that helps them be understanding and compassionate and emotional and sensitive when maybe they've been taught not to be those things, right? So they need to really balance that within them. And so this is going to lead us into our next show, bringing some of this in about just healing ourselves, healing the earth, and also connecting, right? Of course, so the show is about connected and how all things are connected. So we're going to bring this information further. So again, it's always a pleasure. I'm very aware of how much time I have left with all of you, and I'm very grateful for all of you who joined me here to get this information. And again, play with it, invite you to explore this, right? And as we move into these archetypes and how everything is so connected, we can just go down these rabbit holes and just get more and more wide-eyed and like, wow, this is amazing, and how everything is so fits into one another so beautifully, right? Life is beautiful. Consciousness is expansive and so crazy, interconnected on so many different levels. And I love it. I'm passionate about it, sharing it with you, right? And so, yes, invite you to take this further, play with it. And as always, if you want to reach out to me, if you have any suggestions for whether I should do this in this, like in another version, season 2, I'm open to hearing them. Or if I should just shorten it all up and do my own thing on YouTube, I'm open to hearing that too. So whatever it is, I wish you all well. Enjoy your week. I hope to see you next week back here at Connected. Take care.
This has been Connected with your host, Andrea Dragonfly. Join Andrea each week on an extraordinary journey, exploring the consciousness of energy and how you are connected. Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave TV network.